This is a relay project. Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
I want to welcome you to a Monday edition of the show. Jesperson here with technical producer John Hicks, and we have got a lot to talk about. Just a very short time, a couple of hours before we went live here. As you know, of course, many of you will catch this show later at your convenience on demand, whether that's the podcast or on YouTube. But many of you join us live streaming, of course, across 7 different social media platforms, presented by California Closets. And we've got a comment here from HY, who's watching us on X this morning. Johnny, HY just says, good morning, Real Talkers. And then there's a whole bunch of good mornings. And then all of a sudden we got a comment here from Carl who says, what's happening? The live chat. Everybody's wondering what's going on as the Deputy Prime Minister, the Finance Minister, or formerly the Finance Minister. This may be news to you if you're catching us live first thing in your morning. Chrystia Freeland has resigned from the Prime Minister's cabinet just hours before she was expected to give an economic update. Now, there's been rumblings that the two, the Finance Minister and the Prime Minister, have not been seeing eye to eye since Justin Trudeau announced his GST holiday and those $250 checks for most Canadians. Now, the rumor out of Ottawa over the weekend was that Chrystia Freeland, as part of her economic update, was going to press pause, was going to essentially say no to those $250 checks. A different story for the GST holiday, which went into effect on Saturday, but it had driven a bit of a wedge between the two. Well, now that wedge is a chasm, as she has released a letter. We'll get into it in just a quick second, announcing her resignation from cabinet. She has announced in the letter that she will seek a seat again in her Toronto riding in the next federal election. Oh, and by the way, she's not the only senior cabinet minister, the only prominent cabinet minister that resigned over the weekend. So did Sean Fraser, Justin Trudeau's housing minister, who says he's out as well. You know, we title every episode, and the title of this one is Trudeau's cabinet collapsing? And I saw that as we asked the question, we got a response here on Twitter, on X, from political scientist Dr. Dwayne Brad, who joins us often on the show. His simple answer, yes. You let us know what you think in the comments as we're talking. You can always send us an email as well to talk@ryanjesperson.com, and we'll get into this story. Is starting in 30 seconds. Plus, Jeremy Klaszus, founder and editor of The Sprawl down in Calgary, an independent media outlet, is going to join us. We'll update the Green Line, talk about mayoral candidates down in Calgary. Plus, kind of a cool crowdfunding mission that Jeremy was on over the weekend to keep his media outlet afloat. The only problem is that if he wasn't successful in it, he was closing the doors. So it's kind of dire straits right now, not just for the big media outlets, but for the independents as well. We all come together in this stuff, and we're going to talk it out on this Monday episode of Real Talk, which is made possible by Alberta's top online real estate school. You can find them at rello.ca. That's where better real estate training starts. If you're thinking that 2025 is going to be the year when you start your new career in real estate, you're going to want to 100% take a few minutes to check out rello.ca. They'll explain why, number one, a career in real estate could be absolutely perfect for you. I mean, I don't even have a career in real estate. I can tell you, you're out of the cubicle and you have unlimited earning potential. How's that for a 1-2 banger? But they're also going to tell you exactly what you need and how to get there. There's 7 different steps to get licensed, and they're the best in the business at getting you there. Plus, once you're licensed, the relationship doesn't end. They've got a team of expert instructors and advisors that can give you good counsel along the way to ensure that you hit the ground running with your best foot forward. Again, you get started at rello.ca. Don't forget the promo code Ryan100 knocks $100 off the Alberta residential and Alberta commercial real estate bundles. Save yourself some dough when you get started today with Ryan100 at rello.ca. So here's this letter. It goes out on X. John and I have both sort of exchanged our first text messages in the morning, and we've got our sense of what we're going to be talking about on the show, but all of a sudden everything changes. As out of Ottawa, the former finance minister, just ahead of her economic update, lets Canadians know by way of an open letter to the Prime Minister, quote, "It's been the honor of my life," says Chrystia Freeland, "to serve in government, working for Canada and Canadians. We've accomplished a lot together." Now, here's the deal. On Friday, the Prime Minister told Chrystia Freeland that she was going to be involved in a cabinet shuffle. He was moving her out of finance and offering her another cabinet position. She says, "On Friday, you told me you no longer wanted me to serve as your finance minister and offered me another position in cabinet. And upon reflection, I have concluded that the only honest and viable path is for me to resign from cabinet." She says, "To be effective, a minister must speak on behalf of the PM and with his full confidence. And in making your decision, you made it clear that I no longer credibly enjoy that confidence and process the authority that comes with it." She also acknowledges and puts out in front of Canadians, essentially confirming the rumor. She says, "For the past number of weeks, you and I have found ourselves at odds about the best path forward for Canada." She notes our country faces a grave challenge today. Incoming administration in the U.S., Trump obviously pursuing a policy of aggressive economic nationalism, including a threat of 25% tariffs. She says we need to take that extremely seriously. That means keeping our fiscal powder dry today. Nice war reference. So we have the reserves we may need for a coming tariff war. She says that means eschewing costly political gimmicks. The wording on that, not an accident, which we can ill afford and which make Canadians doubt that we recognize the gravity of the moment. She goes on to talk about what it means to push back against America First economic nationalism. She says that she knows Canadians would respect and recognize an intuitive approach. She says, "In this conviction, which has driven my strenuous efforts this fall to manage our spending in ways that give us flexibility, we're going to need to face the serious challenges presented by the U.S. She says, "I'll always be grateful for this chance to serve in government. I look forward to working with my colleagues as a Liberal MP, and I am committed to running again for my seat in Toronto for the next federal election." She says, "With gratitude, the Honorable Chrystia Freeland." So there you have it.
With gratitude.
With gratitude, which is the most polite double middle finger that you could imagine. But how about that? Costly political gimmicks. This is the outgoing finance minister after being told she's no longer needed in finance, but was wanted, to be kept in cabinet. Pretty interesting stuff. And it's no wonder that everybody's talking about it across the country because it's a big deal. I mean, Sean Fraser's resignation, I think, was a big one. The housing minister. You remember when he was on the show a few months ago, it seemed like folks were split. The conservative members of our audience thought that Sean Fraser was out to lunch, that they thought that as immigration minister, that his policies had harmed Canada and harmed Canadians. But those that maybe lean a little more left, or those that were maybe a little more sympathetic to the Trudeau Liberals or the Liberal Party, thought, hey, listen, we could be hearing from a future leader of the party. The guy's articulate, the guy's intuitive. Well, he's on his way out too. I do have to say, I think that the Freeland resignation is a bit more significant, but probably what's most significant is that you've got two of them back-to-back in essentially back-to-back days. And, of course, it sends a message across the country that the Prime Minister's losing his cabinet, if not has lost it already.
Yeah.
Right? This is a big one.
I don't want to bring up the holiday references, but his Xmas goose is cooked, Ryan, I think.
It does
here.
feel like it.
And it makes me wonder. I didn't think it was going to happen with, do you shuffle in a new leader? But, I mean, what else do you do at this point? On a Monday morning, your head of finance is just bows out, doesn't even want another position in your cabinet. Sean Fraser, like we said, a very intelligent guy, whether you like him or not, that remains to be seen. But when he was on the show, a guy who I thought, hey, this is a guy who could step into the role. He's well-spoken. He knows what he's talking about. He seems to have some good ideas. And I bet now that he's no longer part of Trudeau's cabinet, he has some alternate ideas. So maybe that could be an option. But here's the thing. We're a year out now, less than a year out from an election. It's time to do something drastic.
But here's what people are thinking now is maybe we should be a couple of months out from an election because, you look at what can make a government fall, in particular, obviously, a minority government, and it's a loss of confidence. That's the phrase we use in politics, right? And to maintain confidence, a party has to have enough votes to get things like its throne speech, speech, its budget passed, etc. But if the party has lost the confidence, if the leader has lost the confidence of his own cabinet, of his own senior officials, of his inner team, then what kind of a message does that send, right? And here with Freeland, I think that what she makes clear, I'm just checking out here our Real Talk live chat powered by Park Power, and Kathy says there sure was a lot of subtext and shade in Minister Freeland's resignation letter. I think costly political gimmicks is a phrase that I would imagine Pierre Poilievre is licking his chops. And if he can get over the fact that Freeland and her team penned it, I would imagine that he'll continue to use it. He'll continue to perpetuate it. And maybe Fraser's sending the same message because we know that this government has been criticized in particular by opposition members, but also by many Canadians for its approach to immigration. Well, Fraser was in charge of that for a long time. And with housing, I don't think anybody who's being reasonable would expect a government to solve a housing crisis in 6 months, but a lot of people are looking going, are we even on the right track? Like, is it even the right plan if it's going to play out and figure itself out over the next few weeks, right? I mean, Freeland, Deputy PM, as we mentioned, supposed to deliver this economic update today. I mean, she wouldn't have been based on what she heard on Friday, but not just any update, right? A chance to set the tone on how the government is steering the nation through these choppy economic waters. Instead, she's out the door. So is Sean Fraser. Still MPs, right? But outside of cabinet, this is the guy that Trudeau handpicked to tackle the housing crisis. So you got to wonder what's going on behind closed doors in the PMO right now. Like how's that going? Bruce is in our live chat, says it's a bad day to be a 2024 Liberal, maybe a good day to be a 2032 Liberal when they get back in. Bruce is already making his predictions on how this is going to play out. But as mentioned, Chrystia Freeland, not just another minister, right? She's kind of been Trudeau's right hand through the better course of this government, and his global face during trade disputes, the pandemic, the architect of Canada's economic policy. So her stepping down doesn't just create a hole. Like, it rips a giant crater, I think, in the government's credibility. And for her to bow out the day that she was supposed to stand up and tell Canadians how the government plans to navigate inflation and affordability and an economy that's teetering on recession is a really tough look. The bigger question is where this all leaves the Prime Minister, right? Like, this isn't just bad optics. This is catastrophic. A big day. This is a huge day in Justin Trudeau's tenure as Prime Minister, right? So 2 senior ministers, 2 faces of this government's response to 2 of our biggest challenges, housing and affordability, are deciding to pack it in simultaneously. And so it sends a message to Canadians, like it or not. And I don't think it's because they're reading the polls, because there's nothing new in the polls. The polls are already bad enough. You have to assume that this has something to do with internal dynamics, right? With this cabinet shuffle and a government that increasingly feels like it's on its back foot. And so I'm sure that we'll hear from the Prime Minister. What I thought was interesting is Pierre Poilievre had a media availability today, and that's been postponed. I don't know if that has something to do with this or not. You have to assume that it may, but Trudeau will try to sell Canadians on the idea that his government is steady and that it's still focused on the issues that matter most: affordability, housing, and the economy. But when your finance minister and your housing minister jump ship on the same weekend, that story falls apart. And so these resignations today or over the past 48 hours, I think, aren't just headlines. They're a referendum on Trudeau's leadership within the party, within cabinet, right? And his strategy, quite frankly, I think is in the crosshairs as well. And that means that so is the future, as Bruce just said in our live chat, the future of the Liberal Party. So it feels like the wheels are coming off today. And I think Canadians will decide if this government has anything left in the tank or whether it's time for a change. Our conversation with Max Fawcett sure was interesting a couple of episodes ago last week, where he started talking about we're no longer in the territory of can Trudeau win the next election or not. He said we're now in the territory of, are the Liberals going to wind up post-election with 90 seats or with 20 seats?
And that's what I was just talking about. I mean, cue the Elvis Presley, Ryan. It's going to be a blue Christmas for Prime Minister Justin Trudeau. And he's got to figure things out before January 1st. And honestly, I don't know what the play is here. Like Max said, to get out of being, one of the smallest minorities that's ever going to be on the Liberal side. I mean, 20 seats, 30 seats, maybe less than that. I mean, I just don't know what the option here is other than to just step down, put someone else in there. And even then, the election is pretty much, it's a foregone conclusion now, I think. And like we said with Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives, I think they wake up every week and they see this stuff, and postponing his announcement today or his appearance or whatever, that's because they don't even have to do anything anymore, Ryan. They just wake up in the morning and the wins are just happening for them. They don't even have to push anymore.
I like where you're going. If you think with party colors, it could be a blue Christmas.
That's what I'm saying.
Poilievre.
That's what I was saying.
Maybe that's what they're working on. They might be working on their meme right now. Cactus Sheriff in the live chat, powered by Park Power, your friendly local utilities provider, says the Liberals didn't stand a chance before Freeland's resignation.
Agreed.
Now they stand even less of a chance.
Yeah.
He wonders, will this embolden other MPs or cabinet ministers to speak out? And I think that's what happens, because all of a sudden, and you guys know how media works, right? Like, whether there's going to be scrums, I would imagine many of them will not be making themselves available for at least the next few hours until they get their ducks in a row. No comment. I'm not discussing this, what have you. But it is going to get to the point where every single cabinet minister that anyone can find will be asked the same question. Does the prime minister still have your confidence? Mm-hmm. Are you still confident in the plan moving forward? And of course, with the prime minister, this is tough. A cabinet shuffle, typically, cabinet shuffles can serve several purposes. But number one, they acknowledge that we don't feel like everything's working exactly how it should. Mm-hmm. Number two, shuffling a little bit of new life into government, maybe putting some people into some new roles where you think they can excel, or maybe there's been some stagnancy, or maybe sometimes the government or a political leader just needs a distraction tool.
Sure.
And they can serve as that as well. But this is going to be much bigger than anything else.
Oh, yeah. And
whoever moves into finance now, every single question is going to be about Chrystia Freeland.
100. I was just going to say that they're going to be walking in this shadow, and it's going to be following them for a very long time. And the other thing is, these two stepping down this is really bad, Ryan. Chrystia Freeland, like you said, his right hand, Sean Fraser, these guys go way back. They're very good friends. For him to opt out and say, I have no confidence in Justin Trudeau, in not so many words. I know he didn't exactly say that, but that's a huge thing. And I get what Justin was trying to do. Maybe he was trying to move Freeland out of that because she knows, obviously, she didn't work well with Trump. He doesn't work well with Trump, but she really didn't work well with Trump.
Well, I know. You know what I think?
And
she did.
maybe but the things she said, we have a short about it if you want to go to our TikTok and Instagram. Some of the things she said, I stood up to Trump. I stood up to Putin. I get it. Get a new face in there. Get someone else who's going to go through these woes that we have to obviously deal with the states. But for them to both bow out, I mean, this is really bad. This is horrible.
You're right. And I think what's particularly interesting about Fraser is announcing that he won't seek re-election, because that was not the vibe 6 months ago.
Exactly.
Right?
Wasn't even the vibe when we had him on the show.
Right? No, 100% it was not. And people can go back and listen to that interview. That was not that long ago. That was this fall. Mm-hmm. And I think, like we alluded to a few minutes ago, a lot of people were talking about Sean Fraser like he could potentially be the leader of the party, the future leader of the party. Now he's out completely.
But this makes me think, what's going on behind closed doors? Because for him to say in the fall, just a couple or a few months ago on our show, that he's going to stay the course, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. What happened behind the scenes to make him totally go the other way? Are they trying to reason with the prime minister? Are they trying to tell Justin, here's what we think you should do? And he's just steadfast, and he's just complacent. He's just, no, this is how we're going to do it. And people are like, fine, we're out. Mm-hmm. I didn't think that before. Now I'm thinking maybe he is just staying the course. He thinks he's going to go up against Pierre Poilievre and win, and if he is, he's delusional. And maybe people are just finally seeing that now. And I hate to say that, because before I did not think that was the case. I thought, Justin was in here. He's a very smart guy. Maybe he could work some things. And the other thing is, you never know what happens we've got less than a year now, but that was, more than a year away. Pierre could fuck up enormously before then, and there could be a turning of tides. That doesn't look like it's going to happen.
No, I don't think. I mean, like we said, you'd have to get caught.
Doing something horrible.
It would have to be absolutely and it just wouldn't happen. And then all of a sudden, maybe
he doesn't want to get his clearance. Nobody cares.
Doesn't mean that it defaults back to the Liberals, right? I threw this out on Twitter on X. If you follow me at Ryan Jesperson, you can follow the show at Real Talk RJ as well. Just posted the Freeland letter when it went out earlier this morning. Boychuk H replies, says it sure seems that the Liberals are conceding to failing. Says maybe it's best for the party to use MAID and end the sitting. Jeez. Happy Canuck says, even I am shocked. It really calls into question the Prime Minister's decision-making abilities. This is a bad move on his part, really bad. Kathy says Fraser stepping down, says he won't run in the next federal election. A bad look for Trudeau. Wetland says the end is drawing near for this government. Gabe says Freeland couldn't stand working for the proud feminist any longer. I don't blame her. Ryan says rats are fleeing the sinking ship. Rodrigo says finally now that Trudeau has turned, that Trudeau has turned against Freeland, it is socially acceptable to call her a racist and a white supremacist. Okay, the name calling goes. Eva says the feminist prime minister who keeps destroying strong women, he's got to go now, right? Probably a reference to several former cabinet ministers, including Jody Wilson-Raybould, obviously. And then there's Robin, who can find anything to make it about the $600 million for media. Wonders what happened, Ryan. Did your boy Trudeau want to give you media guys more whore money, and Freeland didn't think that was a good idea?
This is an ongoing comment on social media. We just got one on Instagram the other day from a guy who has pretty significant following, a right-wing kind of conservative posting kind of guy. And when I saw his name pop up that he'd commented on one of our reels, I'm like, okay, let's have some debate here. And it was basically like, how much did Trudeau pay you to have you on the show? Believe me,
we've already told people $150,000. We've already told people it was only
nothing.
It was $150,000 that we received to have Trudeau on the show, which is like basically nothing in today's economy. So
I tell you,
if
you want something to hurt him, let it come out that he paid to be on a podcast. That would be the worst. But all this, Ryan, we haven't even talked about it. I know we won't now, but Randy Boissonneau thing, like everything is just, this is just, no wonder Pierre Poilievre wants to sleep in today and not do an announcement. He doesn't have to do anything, Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, the Boissonneau thing is tough. I think most people have been following that story. Obviously, the Edmonton Centre MP who stepped away from cabinet. So that, I mean, that's, I guess, technically a loss of another cabinet minister, but completely different circumstance. Boissonneau cooked his own goose, and if I think most audience members here know exactly what that's all about. But I think the biggest one from Boissonneau wasn't even the conflict of interest. I think people were wondering about the other Randy story, which we've covered in detail, and the allegations that he was essentially directly involved in this company, of which he's a significant shareholder of the company, getting contracts for PPE during the pandemic, which would obviously be a huge issue for ethics and nepotism and a whole bunch of different reasons. You can't have cabinet ministers owning companies that are getting federal contracts. That's pretty obvious. But I think when most people knew that Boissonneau was in real trouble was when it came out that the indigenous heritage that he's claimed sounds like a bunch of malarkey, and he's not here to defend himself. I'm not going to go too into it, but it's a tough look. He stepped away from cabinet, and I think it's safe to say his political career is probably done as well. So fair enough.
Well, he's not here to defend himself, but the way he phrased it was basically, someone signed me up for this indigenous status without my knowledge, and now it's come out a lot more things that we can't confirm them, but like
telling stories about his
grandmother, and then it turns out she's German. It's just horrible.
Yeah. James in our live chat says, I honestly don't see how Justin Trudeau comes back from this. I think the short answer, James, is he doesn't, right? Smurfy999 watching on YouTube says, I'll give Freeland credit for saying no to Trudeau's bribery money. Vamp wants Trudeau to call the election today, says we can be free by Valentine's Day.
Oh, God. Just give us a non-stressful Christmas, at least.
Jeffrey says, yeah, what a gift that would be for the Conservatives across the country.
Right?
Jeffrey says Trudeau really needs to step aside and get a leadership race going. You just can't govern like this. Jeffrey, I agree. Justin of Balgony says, when the election happens, this will probably be the largest landslide in Canadian political history. It's starting to trend that way. It looks like it could be. Tony, meantime, talking about Trump, Poilievre says, if anybody thinks that Poilievre will stand up against Trump when it comes to Canadian interests, I have Ocean View property for sale in Alberta. That from Tony. So there you go.
I can see PP and Trump golfing right now.
Yeah. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see. I do think, like, to be fair, I think that Chrystia Freeland, and I guess I'll use the verb managed. I think that Freeland and by association, the Prime Minister managed Trump 1.0 decently. I think that most Canadians felt like the trade agreement that they reached was not the worst.
No.
That it could have been worse, that Canada fared okay. And I think that the Liberals were probably planning on reminding Canadians of that this time around. But right now there are so many distractions, and there are so many headlines that are flying. These are, the idea of the horror film, like the call is coming from inside the house,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
These aren't attacks by the Conservatives. This isn't the
no.
NDP threatening to pull its support. These are cabinet
Self-inflicted.
ministers that are leaving.
Yeah, and it's the other thing is, that was a good deal that they got done, but it was the verbiage, the talking after that, the constant of, the Trudeau, the little innuendos about Trump, and then Freeland as well, just making it clear that she doesn't like Trump. I get it. But going into this, I was like, this is going to be a mess, them going down there and trying to talk to him. So I did get the shuffle there. Maybe get a new face in, get someone else in Freeland's position who could maybe at least sit with Trump and not have him hate them to their face. But now, I mean, and don't get me wrong, I know down in the States, Trump and his team are probably very little concerned with Canada politics and Trudeau's team, but they have to be seeing this, and they have to be thinking like, this is not a leader who has any kind of support of his country.
Well, I mean, they're doing what they can to influence Canadian election that hasn't even been called yet, offering their own comments on Trudeau's viability as leader, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Sharon says Sean Fraser is a great speaker. He had one of the best responses to Pierre Poilievre in the House. That's one of my favorite shorts that we've put together. You can find it on our YouTube page not too far back, when Pierre Poilievre and Sean Fraser basically threw down on each other and had what I said was like one of my favorite political interactions in a long time, just absolutely lobbing bombs at one another. You remember the tone from some of the more mature members of our audience. And I'm not talking about your age. I'm talking about the way you're wired. This is a compliment to you. Yeah. Some of our more mature audience members said this is the worst of Canadian politics, all this mudslinging. And I had to come out and confess and say I absolutely love it.
I did too.
It was so entertaining.
When he called PP a Timu version of a right-wing conspiracy theorist, if you just typed into AI or Google, his face would pop up. I said, "Oh, this is getting nasty." But hey, that stuff is okay every now and then. But I mean, what we've been seeing in the House, the arguing, the name calling, all of that, I think we would all like to see a little calm on that and just a stop to it. But now, like, that's another thing. Sean was great at taking on Poilievre. And now you don't have this guy. You don't have this guy by your side who could give the 1-2 punches faster than you can. Justin's losing them.
As you know, like in just the way that it goes, once when people step out of cabinet or are removed from cabinet, they move to the back benches. And especially if they've announced they're not seeking re-election, then they're really on the back benches, and you're never going to hear from them again.
They're not going to speak out.
They may do media scrums. They may release content on their own social media platforms, but that's about it. Ms. KD on our live chat, powered by Park Power, says, rumor has it Sean Fraser's vying for the Liberal leadership for Nova Scotia. How about this from Gabe, who wonders maybe this is Chrystia Freeland's play for the federal leadership? Says that would be awesome, and it could very well be. It could very well be. So, we'll see. Denis, by the way, pointing out on trade, says our ag industry will be impacted badly if we don't stand up to Trump. Denis, you're 100% right, and you can add about 15 other industries to that list as well. Keep the comments coming, and we'll continue to look to this, of course, on our live chat as well as our email. This is a story that we would describe as a developing story, but this is a huge chapter of it. The Sean Fraser resignation, we were going to lead with that today anyway, but when we all woke up to see that Chrystia Freeland had submitted her letter, all of a sudden this story takes on a whole new tone. Jeremy Klaszus of the Sprawl coming up in just a minute. The province has announced its plan for the Green Line. Remember, they stepped in on Calgary's big transit project. Jeremy's got an update for us on that. But first, I want to remind you about Park Power. Online at parkpower.ca, offering electricity, natural gas, and internet province-wide across our home province of Alberta. Low rates, awesome service. I say that with conviction in my voice. This is who our family uses, and profits that are shared with Alberta charities. You can learn more about that on their website. Park Power is currently offering the lowest fixed electricity rate in Alberta. 6.69 cents per kilowatt hour. That's the lowest fixed rate in the province. With winter here, and you starting to look at those bills you're paying, maybe start shopping around? I don't know. Parkpower.ca is where they make it easy for you. You can also find them on all social channels at Park Power Ltd. Freeland Brothers has you set for the holidays, including the magnificent main of your Christmas meal. Whether you're looking at their peach Prosecco glazed gammon ham, their whole smoked turkey, or whole smoked Alberta beef brisket. Their team of Red Seal chefs has you covered. If you want to spend more time with your guests at home and less time by yourself in the kitchen, their seasonal favorites ready for Christmas. For the very first time, they're offering these premium smoked meats, including whole smoked turkey, as mentioned, that peach and Prosecco glazed ham. That sounds incredible. And that smoked beef brisket. So you order it from them, Johnny. They've got it ready to go. You just reheat it at home, and then you and your family can hang out the entire time.
Can
Absolutely
I ask a question?
Perfect. Yeah.
Do they marinate it in it? Is that what it is?
Dude, I have no idea. All I
insane.
know is it tastes phenomenal.
That's insane.
And you can order it today at cateringbyfriesen.com. I wonder if they do. You watch those cooking shows where they take the big syringes and
That's
they
what I was just gonna say,
They
like the
inject
injection,
the flavor like
the
right
basting,
into it. Yeah. But Friesen Brothers famous for their smokers, and that's exactly how they prepare this. You can either order just the main, or of course, if you want them to do the whole shebang, they can do that too. Again, that's cateringbyfriesen.com. And I keep talking to you about this. This feels like the perfect gift for the person in your household that has everything but nowhere to store it. What about the person that has every item of clothing they've ever wanted, but it's all piled up on the floor, hanging on the Peloton? What about a California Closets consultation under the tree? It all starts with a design consultation where their expert designers can talk to you about the magic they can work. Next thing, you talk budget, and you'll quickly come to the realization, like we did as a family, that California Closets can work with almost any budget to execute your vision with a lifetime guarantee. You can request that free consultation today. Learn more about how they work and check out some of their beautiful finished projects online at californiaclosets.ca.
You can marinate, you can baste, you can inject everything I'm eating this holiday season with Prosecco if you want. I would not say no to that at all. Les Landry says, will Notley go federal? That's a funny
who knows? Rachel Notley, as announced last week on the show, is wrapping up her provincial political career at the end of 2024. So coming up in just a couple of weeks. Of course, having stepped aside as NDP leader earlier this year. But yeah, and I think it's probably difficult. It's probably a strange feeling for someone who's been the leader of a party for such a long time, including as premier, to still be in the mix.
Yeah.
Right. And so she's been here with Naheed Nenshi winning the leadership. She's been here, but I think has been making a conscious effort. Not I think, she told us she's been making a conscious effort to kind of stay out of the limelight.
Oh, you haven't seen a picture with them together
anyway. It's not her party anymore.
Yeah.
She doesn't want to be doing interviews. She doesn't want to be commenting on policy. It's not her party anymore. She's not the leader. So our best wishes to Rachel Notley as she moves forward, whatever that is. And obviously we hope to sit down with her early in the new year. The ask is in, as they say. So we expect to talk to Rachel Notley at some point coming up. We're grateful that the editor and founder of the Sprawl Calgary, Jeremy Klaszus, has made time for us this morning. We've got just a world of respect for the work that he does. My man, it's nice to see your face again. You had a very busy weekend, a nose to the grindstone kind of a weekend. Talk to us about what you were working on and why you were doing it.
Yeah. Well, the struggle of independent media, Ryan. And one of our struggles at the Sprawl is, taking stock of the year 2024 and looking at, all the great editorial work we did, which is fantastic. And people tell us they appreciate it. All our work on municipal politics, etc. All of that's great and invigorating and all that. And then look at the financials for 2024. And the Sprawl lost $20,000, about $20,000 in 2024. And so that's a hard pill to swallow. And talking with my wife about this, we're often talking about how much longer do I do this? How much longer do you try to make a go of, independent journalism? And kind of, I come around to, I'll do it as long as it's viable. And when it's not viable, I'll shut it down. And so realizing, what, we got to put this out to the community. Like if you want this thing to be viable, you got to support it, because that's how this works. And so yeah, I put out a call on early Saturday morning, just laying out the facts, being like, here's the great stories we did. And here's how much money we lost, and we're a small operation. and to keep going through 2025. There's lots going on municipally in Calgary, election coming up,
Huge
Green Line, like you're saying, like there's a lot going on, and people are interested in it, and they want good independent information on it. But for that to happen, people got to support it. So yeah, people over the weekend responded very well. We're trying to raise our monthly crowdfunding revenue by $2,000. And I haven't run the numbers that came in yesterday, but I think we're in the realm of 75% of the way there.
Amazing. I'm looking at your website right now, sprawlcalgary.com. That's where we want to send people. If they want to support your work, they can directly click there and they can learn more about it. But hang on a second, because I just read a comment from a fellow by the name of Robin who was chirping me on X, and he was, talking about how obviously guys like you and I are getting rich off Justin Trudeau and all the money that he's sending to media outlets. But how are you possibly struggling with all the money that you're getting from the federal Liberals? What are you spending all your money on, Jeremy?
Oh, yeah.
Full disclosure.
On the Porsche out front.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, that thing doesn't gas itself up. But
yeah, exactly.
What is, in all seriousness, and I think you're pretty upfront with people, you're pretty transparent about where the money comes from and where the money goes. You laid out, I saw in your plea this weekend, your Save the Sprawl plea. You talked about how you pay your editors and your freelancers, and Sam Hester, the brilliant artist who does a lot of your illustrations. But with regards to government subsidies, government funding, media money, federal, provincial, or otherwise, what's the reality? I've let people know that Real Talk doesn't receive anything, doesn't receive a single cent from government. But how about you?
Yeah, in the past we have applied for those subsidies and got them, some of that grant funding. We didn't get any this year, but I did put in applications this year because I have a $20,000 hole in my budget that I need to fill. I find myself really torn on this whole media subsidy issue. Because on the one hand, running an independent news outlet, I need more revenue. So of course, I'll take it where I can get it in a sense. But on the other hand, it's kind of a real mess. The overall federal policy on media and some elements of it are just ridiculous. For example, so I was at an event all weekend promoting the Sprawl. We had a table at Market Collective, and we're introducing people to what we do. And people are like, "Oh, are you on social media? Can I follow you on Instagram?" And I'm having to explain to these people, no, you can't, because news is blocked on Meta in Canada. And that's due to a standoff between the federal government and Facebook over the Online News Act. And that's so... And not to go too much into the weeds, but the federal government basically said that, Facebook and Google are stealing publishers' content. They're stealing from us. And therefore, they should pay news publishers. The reality, of course, is they're not stealing from us. As publishers, we want people to read our stuff. We're posting our stuff there to try to find an audience. So they kind of started with this flawed premise, and they've extracted a payout from Google, which is good. The Sprawl's ineligible. We're too small, but a bunch of media organizations will see some of those funds. But Facebook basically said, "Hey, no, we're just going to block it. We're not going to do news. We're getting out of news in Canada, and that's how we're going to deal with it." So, like, when we're trying to build an audience and don't have Instagram, for example, like we used to put all of Sam Hester's comics on Instagram. It was great, a great way to get kind of get out there in front of people, and it's like that's gone. So it's a real mess,
dude. I love that. First of all, I've loved you and respected you for a long time, and I love that you have a smile on your face right now as you're describing like setback after setback. And we're not here to like make this negative and to bitch and moan the entire time, but like I just want to say the same thing happens to us. It's kind of funny. We've had Johnny and I've been trying to figure out a way around it, and there really isn't a way around. You can start getting creative, and you ask your audience to sort of like find this content here, but go here to find find this or link to here to here to here, and it just becomes such a hassle. But the most bizarre part about it is that the big media conglomerates, the big companies, like the big ones that are owned by like American hedge funds and the multi-billion-dollar entities, are the ones that were doing all the bitching and moaning that they weren't able to monetize their content. They wanted the feds to step up on something, and the consequence of all this was that the little guys, the independents, arguably are the ones getting most screwed by it. Would you agree?
Exactly, because when you're a small independent, like the biggest challenge is just getting it in front of people, letting people know you exist. We don't have the advantage of being, the Calgary Herald, an institutional name in the city, or the Edmonton Journal, or CBC, or CTV, or whatever it is. People, even this weekend at this event I was at, the Sprawl's been going for 7 years, and most people I encounter there, every person who comes to the table, I say, Are you familiar with the Sprawl? Most people aren't. Like, I have to explain it from the very beginning. So to try and get people just aware of it is a really big challenge. So when you lose access to those platforms, that's what just drives me crazy.
Okay, I want to get to... Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, the government, and then they just double down on it, right? Because it's become for the Trudeau government, we're standing up to Facebook, we're standing up to big tech, we're standing up to these, this evil tech empire. So it's kind of like they have doubled down on what they see as this virtuous position.
What would you like, Jeremy? What would you like to see? Like, let's say we spent the whole, the opener of the show talking about the biggest story in the country, obviously, which is that Trudeau's right hand is essentially gone. Chrystia Freeland says that he can sink or swim on his own. Says we're at odds. Basically says he's lost confidence in me. She's obviously lost confidence in him. I mean, that's the big story. So people are talking about this is essentially becoming a coronation for Pierre Poilievre. I mean, that's going to be the tone of a lot of the political discourse over the next number of weeks and months for sure. So let me ask this, a focused question from a media entrepreneur and a journalist like you. I bet you would have cringed 10 years ago to be described as a media entrepreneur, hey? Most journalists I know want nothing to do with the commerce side because they feel like it kind of bastardizes their work a little bit, quite frankly. But this is the new reality. If you want to roll out an independent entity, you got to make it financially viable for obvious reasons. So here you are. So let me ask you this. What would you like to see as campaign promises from the federal parties, and what would you like to see from the next Prime Minister of Canada, be it Pierre Poilievre or somebody else? It's going to be Pierre Poilievre. What would you like to see when it comes to support for media? What role do you think the government would play? What role should it play? And what would help out entities like the Sprawl?
Yeah, and like I said at the start, I am torn on this because my own kind of philosophy on this is audience support is best. You want to have revenue that is 100%. Not dependent on government and grants and all this stuff. You want the audience to be supporting what you're doing. That said, because of these policies now, the reality is that many news outlets, big news outlets and small, independent and big corporate ones, are reliant on these federal dollars, such that, if you just axed them all, it would be devastating, kind of across the board. It wouldn't be devastating for the Sprawl, which is a very good thing, and that's something I'm kind of always focused on, is like, you've got to get the audience support because a new government comes in and that could be it, right? In terms of what they could do, one idea that I've heard floated that I like a lot is the idea of kind of a more of a deeper tax refund on subscriptions to news. So you're not paying news outlets, but you are assisting Canadians with supporting news outlets. I like that idea a lot, but like I said, it's kind of it's a bit of a mess because you have these independent publications, small publications, and large, that are reliant on these federal dollars now, and for better or worse, that's the situation.
Yeah, no kidding. Jeremy Klaszus, our guest. He's the founder and editor of The Sprawl at sprawlcalgary.com. Let's prove, and we've got a bunch of people in our live chat that are saying, I already subscribe to the Sprawl. I already support the Sprawl, and that's awesome. And quite frankly, I'm not surprised to hear it. We got an audience that knows what's up. But for those that may be hearing about the Sprawl for the first time, let's prove to them the caliber and the quality of your journalism. I want to talk to you about the Green Line in Calgary. You obviously sum this story up better than I can, but it's my home city, so I care deeply about what happens down there. And a pretty remarkable development a relatively short time ago as the province stepped in and essentially took over the Green Line, basically implying that they don't think that the city's doing a good enough job of making it happen. They're watching the budget balloon. They're watching the timeline extend. And just a couple of days ago, we had from Provincial Transportation Minister Devin Dreeshen an update on the province's plan for the Green Line, which adds a whole bunch of track, adds like 5 or 6 new stops that weren't there in the first place, says it's going to stick to the same budget while adding all those stops. So some people are going, ooh, but a lot of the critics are saying it lacks any real tangible detail. What do you make of the update, and what's your up-to-the-minute reporting on the Green Line down in Calgary?
Yeah, I mean, what they've announced is not a surprise. So City Hall decided that they wanted to tunnel under downtown. Maybe I should back up and say all of this has been, debated and turned over and changed many times over the last, 8 years since 2017. Or my math maybe is a little off there. 2017, I think it was, or maybe it was 2018, when they first approved the Green Line alignment. And it's been changed many times. Should we go over the river? Should we go under the river? How far south should we go? How far north should we go? Downtown, should we tunnel under downtown? Should it be at grade downtown? Should it be elevated downtown? And where City Hall landed was, let's tunnel under downtown. It's expensive, but if we tunnel under downtown, we can go north where there's huge ridership demand, and we could go south. The problem was many delays on the Green Line. This thing was originally supposed to open in 2026, the first part of it, which is funny to me because here we are, and it's a little over a year to 2026, and we have 0 kilometers of track built for this project. But anyway, so this summer, City Hall decides we are going to proceed with going downtown, tunneling under downtown. To do that with inflation and everything that's going on is super expensive. The price tag kept going up to $6.2 billion, but they're like, let's bite the bullet and get this downtown thing done. Then the province jumps in and is like, no, we're not going to fund this alignment. And what they're basically responding to is some different suggestions for where the track should go downtown. And there's a group that's been lobbying. It's a group led by retired oilman Jim Gray, and there's some other engineer types, former city engineers and whatnot. And they're saying, don't build it under downtown. It's too expensive. It's too risky. And this group had the ear of the province. Premier Danielle Smith was quite open about that. She said, I've been paying attention to what they're saying. And so basically what they've rolled out is a variation on what this group has been proposing, which is don't tunnel under downtown, build it elevated through the core, and that way it's cheaper and you can go further south. What City Council approved in the summer was like this very short, what some people call the green stub, like that didn't go far at all. It was just mainly the downtown chunk of the line.
Do you get the sense, kind of an interesting comment here from Noob Try Again in our live chat says, I cannot understand how the Premier, Danielle Smith, can say to the feds, stay out of provincial business, yet all she's doing here is fucking with municipalities where it's not wanted or where it's not needed. In other words, she's not staying in her lane on transit. What's the sense that you're getting in Calgary? Calgary sent more NDP MLAs to the legislature than Conservatives, but I think a lot of people still look at Calgary as the more conservative of the two major cities. I could debate that all day long. I don't even know that anybody would put much of a fight up, and it sure looks like, we'll talk about municipal political parties in a second, Calgary Conservatives are organizing big time for the next municipal election. What's the sense you're getting? What's the vibe you're getting, Jeremy, from the average Calgarian? Is there outcry over the province stepping in on the green line, or do Calgarians just want a transit project to get built on time, on budget? Like, what's the sense you're getting?
I mean, at this point, honestly, I think people are like, let's see this thing.
Yeah.
Like, it's been through, this is just, there's been so many changes and so many, no, it's going to go this way, it's going to go that way, it'll go that far, no, it'll only go this far. Like, for years and years, while inflation is driving the costs up. And it's, you don't have to be very smart to figure out that, if you build it now versus building in 2 years, there's going to be a big difference in terms of cost. So I don't know, talking to people, even on the weekend, what I'm hearing is like, if it means they're building it, good.
Yeah.
If it's actually going to get built and it's not just, all politics and changing our mind back and forth, good. That said, you're 100% right. It is a power play by the province to, they very much been very clear about, hey, we're taking this over, while at the same time saying, it's a city project.
Yeah.
But it also ties in with what they're planning for passenger rail. Premier Smith's been very open about that as well, which is she wants a Grand Central Station in Calgary. And when I first heard that, I kind of laughed to myself. I'm like, okay, yeah, Grand Central Station. It sounds like one of these, how
I kind of like it, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, it's thinking big. To me, it sounded a little too boostery, like we're trying to be a New York. But the idea is like to build passenger rail, Edmonton, Calgary, as part of
Calgary,
that.
Banff, Calgary, Lake Louise.
Exactly. So that's a big piece. And one of the things that's going on here is the province is saying, we want whatever happens with the Green Line to tie into this Grand Central Station that we want to build. And so the Calgary Banff thing, that's kind of, it hasn't been approved, but there's a group that wants to, a private group led by the Watrous family, oil tycoon Adam Watrous. They want to build this rail from the Calgary airport to Banff. And this summer they said to the province, if you build the section from the Calgary airport to downtown to this Grand Central Station, or whatever you want to call it, we'll build the rest of the line, downtown Calgary to Banff. We'll take care of that.
Honestly, Jared, I don't think that the average person, and maybe I'm wrong, and Real Talkers will definitely let me know if I'm wrong, but I don't think people are going to care whether it was like Calgary City Council's plan or whether it was the UCP's plan. Like, I don't care about that. What I do care about jurisdiction. I have heightened awareness around different levels of government, big dogging one another. Like, you remember when Trudeau's Liberals, we're talking a lot about Justin Trudeau and the federal Liberals today for obvious reasons. They've done a ton of deals directly with municipalities, including here in Edmonton, like a 9-figure housing project announced directly with the municipalities. And it really pissed off the premier. It really pissed off the provincial government. You remember they're introducing legislation that would require the federal government to send all federal dollars across the premier's desk, metaphorically, that the provincial government, with this sort of Alberta First strategy, would decide which federal funding and which projects were best for the province and best for the cities in the province. And obviously municipalities are going, listen, you're cutting off our funding on police, you're downloading costs to us, our property taxes are rising as a result, and now you're taking away the possibility or the option for us to deal with the feds. Obviously, it's a problem. And that's politics at work. I understand some of it is gamesmanship. I understand some of it is actual just operational protocol, trying to find efficiencies, etc. But of course, there's always politics underneath it. I think that the UCP does a wonderful job of undermining Calgary City Council by taking this over. And if they can properly get it built, then fine. And it would probably serve a double purpose next municipal election to say, hey, listen, the only reason this transit line was built, or the only reason that there's meaningful construction and progress happening is because it was taken out of the hands of city council. That's a tough look for any councillor seeking re-election, and in particular the mayor. But when it comes down to, like, you know, brass tacks, I don't think that the average citizen cares about who got it built. They care that it got built, you know, whether that's
100%.
the tourism line to Banff, whether that's, you know, light rail transit in Calgary or Edmonton or anywhere else out to the suburbs or to the post-secondaries, or from the airport to the downtown core. It's mind-blowing that that doesn't exist already. I think that's truly what people are looking for.
Yeah, they just want to see actual construction.
And
they
it's
want
their
a train
money.
they can ride.
The people want to
100%.
see their money actually, you know, going towards things that are getting built, right? The costs on these things rise by literally hundreds of millions of dollars every year that they're delayed, literally.
That all of that said, I can tell you the sentiment in north central Calgary is one of frustration. So everything we've been talking about here in terms of what the province is going to build as their green line alignment is downtown Calgary to south into the deep southeast. So it's going to go into communities in the far suburbs south, which is great. There's tons of people there. The city's growing by like 70,000 people a year, very high rate of growth. But what's the question mark is the north section of this line, because that was originally a key component, and that was City Hall's rationale for, you know, approving this very kind of, even they acknowledged when they approved it in the summer, this very short, this shortened green line. They're like, we got to do this so we can connect it north and south. And the ridership demand is huge in north central Calgary. The growth is exponential there. It's exploding. And the plan for it was to run it up Center Street and into those far suburbs where there's high demand. And now that's all, it's not even really on the table, except as like a future aspiration at some time. So yeah, I think like parts of the city will be very happy to see it built, and then parts are just going to be like, what in the world?
Yeah, and I mean, then there's like the element of the population that doesn't give a rip about public transit, and even if it was efficient, and even if it was safe, and even if it was affordable, they still wouldn't use it. But that's not the target market, I don't think. And I think it's safe to say, I hate to drag Johnny into these types of things, but you and I talk often. Like I don't use public transit too much, but it's for me, it's like a chicken or the egg type thing, where, you know, I go, do I not use it because it's inconvenient, or is there some other reason behind it? And I do think, like I told you, I flew out to Vancouver. I was doing a hosting gig earlier this year, and just decided to try something new. And so I figured I would, and I did like a 2 seconds of research. The online resources were pretty good to be able to sort of plan out your trip, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Rode the
Quick,
Canada line.
fast.
I think it was like $7.50 or maybe
Transit's incredible.
It was like $8 or something. And I rode, I grabbed my suitcase. I think I had a carry-on. I hopped on the Canada line, and for $8 I went from the airport to downtown, 2 blocks away from my hotel, walked to my hotel. It was unbelievable. Now I did feel like I deserved a pat on the back for using public transit, which is now I'm sort of trying to get that administered to myself right now. But if those options were there and they were, you know, perceived to be safe, which is a whole other conversation, and I think that the perception of safety comes with increased ridership. The more people, the more safe you feel. I bet you a lot of the critics and a lot of the detractors might actually find themselves using transit, right? I mean, I actually think
100%.
they would. I think that you would see ridership go up from the people right now that want to just take a big dump on the project. I think that if it was actually there and convenient, going past their house or a couple blocks away from their house, and they could get to the hockey game and have a few drinks and not worry about an Uber or waiting for a cab or what have you, I bet you more people would use it.
Well, SkyTrain feels safe because no matter what time of the day it is, there's lots of people on
packed.
it. And that's the other thing. Because the transit isn't up to the level it should be here, there's just not as many people on it when it's not those, you know, obviously 8 a.m., 5 p.m., after school, it's packed because kids are on it, going to school, people are on it, commuting for work. But those other times late at night when there's not a lot of people on there, that's when it gets scary. But in Vancouver, SkyTrain, there's always people on it. It feels like safety in numbers, right? Yeah. So I agree with you there.
100%. Hey, Jared, let me ask you. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to jump in and say, like, I went to Chicago a few months ago, and then coming home. So when I was in Chicago, take the train from the airport downtown. it's beautiful. It's perfect. It's cheap, like you're saying. And then coming back to Calgary, like I got in, I think it was 11 at night, and I'm like, I don't want to do the $40 taxi. So there is the bus from the airport, and I'm just like, this is so
Bush League is the word you're
Bush
looking
League,
for.
yeah, exactly.
Bush League
100%.
is the word you're looking
I'm riding
for.
This empty bus,
Words.
down Center Street, miss my transfer, and then walking half an hour home, and I was just like laughing to myself. I'm like, this is where we're at, right? So,
yeah. Hey, Jared, you people can check out sprawlcalgary.com. You've got a couple of back-to-back features that I wanted to get into. Number one, the headline reads, published on December 7th, how the UCP is rejigging Calgary's next election. And then a follow-up you released about a week later, meet the Calgarians running for mayor and council in 2025. We don't need to get into the weeds on all the names and that sort of thing. There's lots of time to talk about that, and you and I can get into that as next fall approaches. But what I do want to talk to you about is the advent of political parties, in particular in the city of Calgary, and respectfully to those that are organizing in Edmonton, because there is some action happening, but not as much. Calgary seems to be kilometers ahead on this one. And you've got several political parties with names, brands, leaders out there. Take us into it.
Yeah, so we have 3 so far. One that is kind of a progressive, maybe center-left party called the Calgary Party. Then there's a center-right party called the A Better Calgary Party. Some of these names get confusing. I kind of laughed to myself because there's the first party to announce is called A Better Calgary Party. And then the second party was the Calgary Party.
Oh, so no.
Which they kind of walked into that one. I kind of laugh at the.
I'm starting one called the Best Calgary Party.
The better
exactly.
Calgary Party.
Better, yeah, best, exactly. Okay. And then one announced last week, Communities First, which is 4 sitting city councilors announcing this new party that they're going to run for.
So this is Sonia Sharp, Terry Wong, Andre Shabbat, and Dan McLean, right? Those are
exactly.
some pretty recognizable names.
Oh, yeah, 100%. And all of those parties right now are saying that, it's not going to be like a provincial party. It's not going to be like a federal party with top down. The leader says what goes, and there's a party whip and all that stuff. Like, people are still going to be free to vote independently. But yeah, it's new terrain. It's new terrain for the cities, but definitely there's organizing going on, and definitely there's also candidates that are trying to figure out, do I run independently or do I run as part of one of these parties?
So to remind the audience, the incumbent mayor, Dr. Jyoti Gondek, has announced that A, she will seek re-election, and B, she will not run with a party, correct? She's running as an independent.
Yeah, and it has used very strong language about, the introduction of these parties, saying it's the kiss of death to local representation. So she's kind of staking out, I'm going to be independent. I'm not going to go in on this.
You think it's going to hurt her, Jeremy?
Well, one of the big factors with parties is you can essentially fundraise and spend double. So a candidate can spend X number of dollars under the province's new rules, but under the rules, then the party as well can fundraise and spend basically the same number of dollars. So you have more firepower if you can, if you're a party and you can raise a bunch of money, you can essentially spend a lot more. So who knows? I mean, that said, like, people, the independent aspect, I don't know about for Mayor Gondek. I think that'll be that she's got a tough road ahead.
She does
to re-election, no question. Which is different in Calgary. That's a big shift from previous Calgary mayors. I think of Dave Bronconier, Naheed Nenshi after their first terms. Like, basically nobody ran against them. You had like a handful of university students or something running against them, and it was just cakewalk elections for them. That's not the case in Calgary at all for the 2025 election.
So pretty interesting. I mean, I was talking to a kind of a heavyweight political organizer in Edmonton just the other day, off the record, so I'll leave it that way, well, at least what I mean by that is I won't use their name, but I'll tell you everything they said. And they said to me, I was talking about Gondek down in Calgary and Sohi in Edmonton, because Sohi's certainly got his critics, but I think a lot of times as well, supporters are quiet. Right? That doesn't mean that they don't exist. And certainly there is a tale of two cities. I think that Gondek has had more sort of like fiery opposition, whereas Sohi has a little bit more kind of like maybe passive opposition, but I think people are organizing against him. Anyway, this person said two things that really jumped out at me. They said, number one, never underestimate the incumbent advantage. They said that there is a huge advantage for name recognition and for the incumbent candidates, and that includes the city councilors and the mayors. We'll see. I remember being down in Calgary when was it Bill Smith, I think, that had the support of the Calgary Flames last municipal election. I was at a Flames game in the Saddle Dome, and you know the LED ring lights that go around the whole arena? It was like, elect Bill Smith, vote Bill Smith. And I was going, oh my gosh, wow. Because he was claiming that he could get them a better arena deal, and the Flames loved that, and whatever. Nenshi still won that election, and I would say handily. I mean, all the rumors of his demise were obviously greatly exaggerated, so that's a thing. I also personally think that both mayors are very beatable right now. So it depends on who the candidate is, quite frankly. You can't comment on the fate of an incumbent until you know who's running against them. Number two, on the fundraising side, and you bring it up because it is very significant, and those independents, how they may have their hands tied to a certain degree. I asked this organizer who is working on a campaign for a mayoral candidate in Edmonton. I said, how much are you going to spend on your campaign this time around? How much are you expecting to spend? He says, if you want to win in Edmonton, you got to be prepared to spend between $1 million and 1.3. So that gives people an idea of what these budgets look like and the fundraising that has to happen. Pretty significant. So if you start talking about somebody working with half a budget or half a purse, then all of a sudden you're talking about $500,000 worth of billboards, buses, podcast advertising. Would you accept political advertising on the Sprawl?
Well, we don't run any ads,
so that's a no.
An easy answer. Yeah, we're ad free. So
are you on principle ad free, or would you accept ads if it could make you more viable? Have you thought about this? I'm sure you have.
I've thought about it. It doesn't. It would fit awkwardly into our model because our publishing rhythm is too infrequent. It's a slow journalism model, so it's a bit different. That said, I mean, we've tinkered with it. I think I ran one ad for a local coffee shop in a podcast last year.
Yeah,
that was our foray into ads.
And I'm assuming they didn't give you $50,000.
No, unfortunately.
Yeah. Hey, Jer, listen.
But yeah, the incumbency that's a huge. What you bring up is, it'll be super interesting because usually if you're an incumbent, you're laughing. You can be a good counselor, you can be a bad counselor. It doesn't matter. You're reelected. I don't think that's the case this time. And looking around, I was talking to Lori Williams, political scientist at Mount Royal University, and she was like, look at incumbents everywhere. They're getting hammered.
Yeah.
U.S. election, like across the board, provincial, municipal. So it'll be interesting.
Yeah, I mean, David Eby barely survived. Scott Moe, relatively speaking, barely survived, or at least lost a bunch of seats.
Exactly.
Rachel Notley lost. Justin Trudeau's going to lose. Blaine Higgs lost in New Brunswick, off the top of my head. So yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, the incumbent advantage is not bulletproof. But I guess what this person's pointing out, which I do think is true, is it's not as easy as you may think to knock off incumbents. I'll be curious to see with these three political parties, and there could be more in Calgary to come, and obviously in Edmonton, we're kind of waiting. We had the founders of a group called Tap Yag in our studio a while ago, the day that they launched. But it's been a bit of a slow drip up here in the capital city. A lot of times, for obvious reasons, you look at the names associated with the party to gauge their seriousness or to gauge their horsepower. The Calgary party, the names that jump out, like Chima, Nenshi's former chief of staff, Stephen Carter from, co-host of The Strategists, obviously, was Jody Gondek's campaign manager and her chief of staff for a hot minute. So that gives, some credibility to the Calgary party. And then there's the Better Calgary party, which I think is a hilarious name. people will sort of, it doesn't really say what it stands for. They'll have to establish themselves. They describe themselves as a center-right party. I think it's dangerous in politics these days to use the word center. I just look at that any party that's trying to promote itself, like the Alberta Party would be an example of like, yeah, we take good ideas from across the political spectrum and we're in the messy middle. And it just doesn't seem like that's an appetite that people have these days. Communities first will be interesting. As you mentioned, you got 4 councillors, Sharp, Wong, Shabbat, and McLean there. They've got the name recognition. They've obviously got the experience. But I do see that they're promoting that they will prioritize, quote, smart and respectful growth by encouraging higher densities through redevelopment that respects community character. This is where things can get really contentious. I don't know if it's been like this for you down in Calgary. Edmonton had some rezoning work happening and new bylaws come in. And now, for all intents and purposes, I'm exaggerating a little bit. I'll just let the audience know, take this with a grain of salt. But you can kind of basically, in a way, build anything anywhere now. I'm not saying that you can build like a chemical plant in the middle of a residential neighborhood, but 4 plexes, 8 plexes, 12 plexes, 16 plexes. People are starting to envy those big old sprawling lots in the so-called heritage neighborhoods and say that could be perfect for high density housing. And many of the longtime owners or the people that bought there because they love the big lots and they love the old sprawly feel are obviously up in arms on this. So you've got people signing restrictive covenants. You've got people vowing to get involved in the next municipal election. Are you seeing the same thing in Calgary? Because that's as much as that may seem like a bit of a benign, not benign, but it's sort of like okay, they're going to encourage higher density, respects community character, sounds reasonable. But for a lot of people, that'll get them fired up more than anything else.
Oh, yeah, and that's going to be a big election issue, I think, next year, definitely.
Yeah.
Calgary, same thing. We City Council approved some blanket rezoning, as it's called, earlier this year, and that's the community's first party. I think you can expect them to be driving hard on that.
Yeah.
That they're opposed to these changes, opposed to communities undergoing this rapid change, et cetera. And then you're going to have others on the spectrum who are saying, we need more housing. The name of my publication is The Sprawl for a reason, right? And that's a thing that, is just a constant issue in Calgary, which is where are we going to build this housing?
Oh, everywhere.
Yeah.
It's an issue everywhere, right? I mean, but this audience understands this already, but any major city, and Calgary and Edmonton are great examples where the population growth is very exciting. There's a really encouraging element to the fact that these cities are adding, I mean, I'm making up the number, but approximately, 50,000 citizens a year. I mean, it's wild. Yeah. It's wild if you think about it. You go, where are they all going to go? And so if they're not building up, they got to build out. But if you build out, it doesn't solve everything. You got to build new schools and fire halls and put in new utilities, and it's very expensive. Oftentimes, you have inner city neighborhoods that are neglected. You got inner city heritage schools that are being shut down because they don't have the population they need, and other schools are bursting at the seams, and they're not without issues. And I understand. For me, like honestly, and I'm not just being a wimp here. I'm not just refusing to plant my flag, but I can be a little column A, a little column B in this. Like I understand why people get pissed off when all of a sudden the whole vibe of a street is completely altered by a big new development going in. But I also understand that where are you going to put the people? Like that's also a very real challenge.
And I'm interested to see how this plays out at different levels of government, because you have municipal conservative councillors who are opposed to changes in rezoning and whatnot. And then you have federal conservatives who are saying, build, get out of the way, and let's get building everywhere.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to see more of that tension in the year ahead. It'll be interesting to see how it unfolds. And ultimately, I think the 2025 election in Calgary, that's not going to be, I'm not going to say that's the main issue, but it will be a big issue for sure.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. What do you think would be the main issue when it comes to this is my favorite question to ask people. What's the ballot box question, right? What is it? Is it a referendum on Gondik's leadership? Is it different than that?
Yeah,
what is it?
To a point. I mean, there's so many things. I mean, there's also the arena deal in Calgary, which is kind of faded into the background a little bit, but it's going to be interesting. Even the community's first councillors And Sonia Sharp in particular led the charge for the arena deal. So that's $853 million of public money going to the Flames arena versus the old arena deal of where the city's putting in $290 million. So you've got the fiscal conservatives championing the arena, which is the city's second largest capital project other than the Green Line. And they pushed that through with no public debate. It was not debated at council other than behind closed doors. It was just passed in literally less than 2 minutes. 800, like nearly $1 billion in public money. So, I mean, does that become an election issue? I think to a point it will be, but I think you're also right. Mayor Gondek's leadership, that's a question on people's minds too.
Yeah. Jeremy Klaszus is the founder and editor of The Sprawl. You can find him online at sprawlcalgary.com. I want to give a shout out to Super Chat Ken, who's kicked in $5 on our YouTube Super Chat. Says, speaking of supporting your local news, Ken, thanks very much. And Jeremy, I don't know if you know, the way that this works is when we get a Super Chat contribution, we translate that into some cold beers into the Real Talk beer fridge, and you've now got a couple cold ones with your name on them, Jer. The next time you come up to the capital city, we'd love to have you here in studio and crack a cold one or two. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for the amazing work you do. I also want to mention to people that you released some numbers as well. You don't just do print, you do your podcast as well. And obviously, you should be very proud of the numbers that you're drawing on that. I think you said over the course of the year, what was it, like more than 60,000 downloads or something like that? That's really great. That's really wonderful, dude.
Yeah, plugging away. Let's we'll keep going and into the election campaign.
Keep it up. We need this journalism to continue. Jeremy, we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks for doing the interview. And friends of Real Talk, friends of independent media, you can support The Sprawl. You can help save The Sprawl by signing up to support their work today at sprawlcalgary.com. I see some interesting comments here as we were talking about advertising and this type of thing. I see Peaches here says, put political ads on Real Talk. Why would you do that? It just raises the idea of pay to play. Don't do it. We've only accepted one, as far as I can remember, and I would remember, we had one mayoral candidate in the city of Edmonton last election advertise on Real Talk. I didn't voice the ads, number one, because when the host voices, it kind of implies that it's an endorsement. Like when I tell you to consult with California Closets or buy your groceries at Friesen Brothers or sign up to get your power at Park Power, I'm telling you that, like, that's what our family does. I'm telling you that I'm giving you the thumbs up, Complete Care Restoration, to work with these companies, right? And so when the host, this is a little bit behind the curtain, but you may find it interesting, when a host voices political ads, it sort of adds an element of like personal endorsement, which is something I'm not keen on. I've never told audience members on this show, number one, who to vote for, and number two, who I'm voting for. That's not something I've ever disclosed in my career. So I do think that's interesting. But on the flip side, isn't it interesting that all of the mainstream media, I mean, they accept, and maybe we're in different boats, but in some ways we're not. They accept political advertising all the time. Yeah. Like all the time.
Why don't you want it for us?
You know? Yeah. So I just think it's kind of interesting that way. Like if you have a voice that's not mine, that's clearly identified as advertising, like pay to play, Peaches, to address your comment, would be like if a political candidate comes on here, like Johnny was joking about earlier, like let's say in theory, which did not happen, obviously, let's say the federal government shot us $10,000 to interview the prime minister and to give him a friendly interview.
We take it
right?
and disclose it.
But then it came out. Let's say we wouldn't
be horrible.
We wouldn't accept that, by the way. But let's say it came out that we had accepted $10,000 to do a friendly interview with a politician. That would be once the credibility of a show is harmed. As they say, it takes a lifetime to build it and a minute to lose it. We'd be screwed. So we wouldn't do it. But I do think that independent outlets are held to a different standard than the big guys.
Sure.
I mean, you look at like the front. I mean, Klaszus talks about the print ad. I mean, the actual printed newspapers. I know not not many people receive those anymore. My parents do. I love it. I love going to my parents' house, getting a coffee, and actually flipping through the newspaper, actually reading the
that
pages.
ink on your
Oh,
hands.
dude, it's the best. But these newspapers, I'm talking post-media papers across the country, they will, the entire front page, and they don't call it the front page, right? It's for sale. So you'll have like an entire, like if as you see them in the newspaper boxes, the whole front is an advertisement, and then you open it, and then there's the real front page. Like if we ever did something like that, people would lose their minds.
Of course they
but
would.
why the double standard?
A huge double standard. I know shows right now that are live on YouTube. I just looked at all the lives going on right now across North America that candid, willingly and openly accept donations from controversial people, businesses, politicians. They don't care. So the fact that we're trying to hold, obviously we have to make our dollars too, but we're holding a standard here, right?
We will always disclose where our money's coming from, and we'll always let you know when something is paid for.
But I like how you said that. Like anyone who thinks that the Prime Minister would pay to come on our show, I don't want to say the word stupid, but you're not using your brain, because it's a no-win for us and it's a no-win for them. If it comes out, both of us are we'll lose credibility. So there's no reason to even do it. And secondly, it's just, if the leader of the country wants to come on the show, of course we're going to let him come on the show no matter who it is.
Obviously.
Shout out to Daryl on LinkedIn. We love live chat comments. So if you comment directly on LinkedIn, X, whatever, it comes right to us. You don't have to come over to YouTube. We would love you to come over to YouTube and subscribe. That's a great Christmas present for us. But Daryl says, all I want for Christmas is a federal election.
You know what, Daryl?
I just might get it.
I think you just might get it. I don't think, and shout out to everybody watching us on LinkedIn this morning, I don't think that you're going to get a federal election call before Christmas. As a matter of fact, I would bet dollars to donuts you're
might
not.
get it right after.
But I do think that 2025 is going to be a remarkable year for elections happening. You got the municipal elections happening in our home province of Alberta. You're going to have a federal election guaranteed, and I think it's going to be fascinating stuff. So, Daryl, you will, I would imagine, be getting your Christmas wish. Your Christmas gift will come. Your wish will come true. Travis, I want to apologize. I missed Travis's question for Jeremy. He's wondering, what does Jeremy use to shave his head? He says, I'm asking as a fellow bald man. I've been seeing, I don't know if Instagram's been trying to send me a message.
Seen
the ads for the guy doing the thing. You and I both are doing the motion.
I've seen it.
It looks like this little sort of three-pronged. It looks like what are those fidget spinners that the kids have, except for the like fidget spinners with little blades on them.
It's like a little baby octopus. I think they're pushing this to guys over 30 all over the internet.
I've got so much respect when I see a properly, cleanly shaved head. I just always wonder, how do you do it in the back behind the ears? I don't know. You can let us know. I also want to note that some of you discovered something on our set this morning that blew my mind, and I want to give you credit. We love this. But first, before we do, speaking of businesses that we're proud to partner with, this is a business that we paid to build our studio, and this is a business that I guess they liked what they saw because they're advertising with us now. And because we've seen Complete Care Restoration at work, because we've seen them solve problems, we saw them figure out a pesky water leak, we saw them work with angles that aren't exactly hard angles anymore in a 110-year-old building. They built our studio per spec and did a wonderful job. Their big business, their main gig is restoring properties that have been damaged by fire, flood, sewer backup, you name it, smoke damage. Use your imagination. Whatever it is that's giving you a headache, they can help you restore your property and rebuild your peace of mind. What I love about Complete Care Restoration, they work directly with your insurance company, so you don't have to deal with the hassle. You hand it over to them, next thing you know, the problem's solved. They treat every property, every project like it's their own. They sure did ours. You can learn more, heaven forbid, should disaster strike, by visiting CompleteCareRestoration.ca. We're so proud to be partnering in 2024, 2025, and beyond with UCAN Youth Services. This is a nonprofit based out of Edmonton, dedicated to helping young people out of harm's way and onto a path of economic independence. And their track record is incredible. We're talking young people aged 18 to 25 typically. Sometimes it's a prompt to get back into an education situation, one that properly fits. Sometimes it may be an 8 or a 12-week training program before you enter the Road to Work project or the Verto project. They've got partnerships with industry that are creating opportunities for young adults that might otherwise, quite frankly, fall through the cracks. You can learn more about how you can help a youth Youth Services Youth today, or maybe establish a corporate partnership. They've got a ton of them, and they're really paying dividends. Visit their website at youcan.ca. And for those of you that are looking at 2025 as a year of personal reinvention, you're ready to launch yourself forward, whether that's a post-secondary journey or maybe a new career opportunity, check out Canada's Open University. That's athabascau.ca. The numbers are really, really impressive. You know, they've got more than 50,000 alumni from over 100 countries, and more than 92% of them say that they're in a job related to their field of study. Can you imagine more than 9 out of 10 graduates working exactly where they were dreaming of going? You can learn more about how AU works, that AU Advantage, by checking out their website. You can apply, you can learn more about financial rewards and other student supports online at athabascau.ca.
Thanks to everyone watching everywhere today. Our first dozen diamonds awarded on TikTok.
What does that mean?
If people don't know what TikTok diamonds are, they are not gifts from users. They come directly from the platform TikTok, and they are awarded based on popularity and creator content that is of quality. So today we got our first dozen. So TikTok is liking our show.
Wow.
Today.
We really appreciate those of you. We made the move earlier this month to broaden our live stream presence across 7 different social media channels. We wanted to make sure that Real Talk meets you where you're at. And that's where we'll hit the ground running in 2025. Always looking for ways to improve the show. We also wanted to remind you, those of us that support us on Patreon, our Real Talk patrons, our email's going out today. We've been wanting to get the word out so that as many of you, and we have added a good number over the past couple of weeks, but we want to let you know that we do have our very special presentation coming up this Friday. That's going to be the 20th of December. It's our annual Real Talk Christmas Zoom party exclusively for Real Talk patrons. So our final show released publicly on YouTube and across our platforms will be on Thursday the 19th, Friday the 20th. We're going to gather on Zoom with our patrons, with our Real Talk Patreon supporters, and have some fun. We're going to have some giveaways, do some trivia. Johnny and I are going to be basically crushing mimosas here in studio wearing
you were
Christmas
say
sweaters.
half cut, but
Yeah,
I mean, it's the holidays.
It's 8:30 in the morning. It's 8:30 in the morning.
Sign up to Patreon to find out.
Yeah, that's right. So that email will be going out today. You can learn more, and you can sign up by visiting our website, ryanjesperson.com. Just click on the connect link. So this is something kind of funny. We weren't obviously planning on talking about this because why would we? But before we get to a positive reflection, which knocked our socks off from Emily in just a second. So I'm watching the live chat here, powered by Park Power. And I actually, as Jeremy Klaszus is talking, I killed my mic. A little peek behind the curtain here, folks. And I said, what's everybody talking about? I said, people are talking about a vape pen. People are talking about cannabis. People are talking about a weed
didn't know what
pen.
they were talking
I said,
about
what on earth are people talking about? What are people? And all of a sudden you look over and you go, oh my gosh. And
Well,
you
I
pointed
peeked
here.
up like this because my view is just obstructed by this, and obviously there's
Nestled.
a party favor sitting there from our Real Talk roundtable on Friday. We had a lot of
Nestled
people in
among
here.
our shiny Christmas balls on this beautiful table built by Urban Timber was this cannabis vape pen, which I had not seen, and I had
Strictly
no idea.
medicinal
And
for anxiety purposes.
Yeah, exactly. It's more of a creative impetus, if you will. But it was kind of funny because I'm going, what on earth are they talking about? Who's talking about a cannabis pen? Well, there it was, nestled between the Christmas decorative balls, and so thanks.
This
Ironically,
is why if you're
in a
listening,
way,
you have to watch the show because
but
there's.
I want to give credit, and I don't have time. We can't scroll way back through here, but I don't know. I thought that it was like I didn't know what people were talking about, but the eagle eyes of our tuning audience, ironically, and the hilarious part about this is that I had lost this, and I had counted it out and counted it done, but I loved it and I saw in particular, who was it that noticed it? One of our audience members. It was Krabby Chris, who said, uh-oh. Krabby Chris said after they were talking, uh-oh, he said the weed vape has gone missing. It's not gone missing. It's just gone back into my pocket. And there's something, it's like finding $20 in your jeans when you're doing the laundry. You know what I'm saying? And so Real Talkers, you helped me find something on our own table that I had written off as lost. So I thought that was kind of hilarious. I thought that was a lot of fun. And we appreciate those of you that engage with the show. And obviously we don't take ourselves too seriously. Speaking of vapes, though, I never met an opportunity to promote the show that I didn't love. If you didn't catch our December 10th conversation, this was an interesting one. The headline of the episode is Should Canada Ban Cigarettes? Talking about a big tobacco settlement. This is a landmark settlement, the $32.5 billion agreement, basically between the feds, the provinces, and big tobacco. But we talked to Rob Cunningham. He's a lawyer. He does work for the Canadian Cancer Society, and he's also the author of Smoke and Mirrors, the Canadian Tobacco War. He gave us kind of, I guess, would you say, the good, the bad, and the ugly of that tobacco settlement, the big tobacco settlement. And we did talk about vapes. We didn't talk too much about cannabis, but we did talk about tobacco vapes. We talked about those Zyn, the tobacco pouches, or the nicotine pouches that it seems like a lot of people love. I see them a lot on the golf course these days and the like. If you missed that conversation, a really interesting one that was on the 10th of December with Rob Cunningham. The episode is called Should Canada Ban Cigarettes? I also wanted to note, just on a personal level, am I seeing correctly that Wise Kyle is in the chat this morning, which is wild. I believe that Wise Kyle underwent heart surgery. Was it this morning? Yeah. Anyway, I just want to give a shout out. Sometimes obviously this audience numbers in the thousands every single day, but at the same time, there's a real personal element to this. And we feel like, even though we may not know you, some of you personally, we do feel that connection. And it's no bullshit when we start talking about like the Real Talk family and how we connect with one another. And I love that people of different political persuasions, people obviously with different perspectives on a number of different things, on many different things, including how the country should be run and the role that government should play in our lives, still gather together in community every single day. And for many of you, that's live. For more of you, it's later, but we know that we still feel that connection. And when we understand that one of our audience members is, if I can be graphic for a second, having their chest cracked open by doctors and having their ticker worked on, we want to send you all the absolute best. So Wise Kyle, on behalf of us here at Relay and Real Talk and this audience, we wish you the best in your recovery. Speaking of positives, first episode of every week, our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy give us an opportunity to kick off the week on the right foot. To fill our buckets, right? To recognize the silver linings, to say goodbye to the negativity, to harness the positive energy, and to renew our faith in humanity. And we got this wonderful email from Emily in Edmonton to talk@ryanjesperson.com. Actually received it just late last night. Emily said, Jespo and the Real Talk team, I wanted to take a break from writing our family Christmas letter to thank you for everything you're doing with the show. It's been a huge part of my routine this year, and I can honestly say it's made me a better, more informed, and more empathetic person. Emily says, what I love most about the show is it doesn't just scratch the surface, it digs deep. Your interviews with people like Dr. Shazma and Dr. Sheila, remember that podcast they just released, opened my eyes last month to the challenges in healthcare I hadn't fully understood before. When they talked about the politics behind healthcare and the realities that doctors are facing, it made me think about my own privilege in accessing care and how the system impacts those less fortunate. Your recent interview with Willie Grant about her husband Glenn's ALS journey was another moment that stuck with me. That was just a couple weeks ago. Says it wasn't just educational, it was deeply human. It helped me see what people go through when faced with something so heartbreaking, and it reminded me how important compassion and choice are when it comes to end-of-life care. The show does an amazing job of connecting the dots. It's not just breaking down the news or giving us facts. It's about understanding how these stories affect people's lives. The way you explore issues like affordability, education, the energy transition, make it real. You help people like me grasp what these big, complicated conversations mean for families, for businesses, and for communities. I just got chills. I'm serious. She says, and maybe most importantly, you've helped me see things from perspectives I might not have considered before. Whether it's somebody fighting for downtown revitalization or a musician like Matt Masters opening up about mental health. That was just a short time ago. You give everybody a voice and encourage your audience to truly listen. Emily says that's rare in today's media landscape, and it's something I truly value. So thanks for what you, Johnny, and the team do. Real Talk doesn't just inform, it inspires. With gratitude, Emily in Edmonton. That's an incredible email that we're going to hang on to, Emily. We sure appreciate it. And we value your feedback. If something really stopped you in your tracks, made you think, maybe somebody performed a random act of kindness for your family. Maybe over the holidays, somebody did something that you weren't expecting that totally transformed your perspective. We'd love to hear about it. An email to talk@ryanjesperson.com with the subject line Positive Reflections could see your story featured in an upcoming episode of Real Talk, proudly presented by our friends at Kuby Renewable Energy. We're talking business tomorrow, including an interview with Dr. Trevor Tombe, the economist, part of a Real Talk roundtable you won't want to miss. We've also got Mo Amir joining us this week from Czech in Vancouver. Some pretty interesting things happening out on the West Coast. We want to dig into that story. And we will have an interview with Premier Danielle Smith before this week wraps, part of our year-round coverage of the politics and stories that matter most to you. Thanks for supporting us on Real Talk. Wherever you're watching us, however you're listening to us, we sure appreciate it. Make it a great day, Real Talkers, and we'll check in with you again soon.
Real Talk is hosted by Ryan Jesperson, executive producer Josh Dunford, technical producer John Hicks, general manager Katie Cook-Chivers, account coordinator Lawrence Derlego, human resources Lena Shepard, website design Mike Johnston, voiceover by me, Carrie Skelton. Real Talk's editorial board is Supriya Dwivedi, Ahmed Ali, Brandy Morin, Ann Castleman, Corey Hogan, Harman Kandola, Catherine O'Neill, and Chris Henderson. Member Emerita, Julie Rohr. Real Talk is recorded in Edmonton, Alberta on Treaty 6 territory, the traditional and ancestral territory of the Cree, Dene, Blackfoot, Saulteaux, and Nakota Sioux, home to the Métis settlements and the Métis Nation of Alberta. Real Talk is a relay project. For more, check out ryanjesperson.com.